What's going on, everybody? Kalipis Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be doing a comparison between the Samsung Galaxy A23 and the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2022. So let's get started. Now with the Samsung Galaxy A23, we're getting a 6.6-inch 90Hz PLS TFT display with a resolution of 1080p, a PPI of 400, an aspect ratio of 20:9, and a screen-to-body ratio of 83%. With the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2022, we got a 6.8-inch 90Hz IPS LCD display with a resolution of 1080p, a PPI of 396, an aspect ratio of 20.5:9, and a screen-to-body ratio of 84.6%. So both of these displays are really good. I'm definitely happy to see the 1080p resolutions. Makes the image look nice, sharp, and crisp. And that's great for content consumption, as is the 90Hz refresh rate. That's going to make the movement on the screens a little bit faster and smoother, which is good for streaming videos, playing games, that sort of thing. And then when you're just navigating through the phones in general, it's going to feel a little bit more premium. I would say the Moto G Stylus does have an advantage here, because as you can see, it's clearly much larger, which is always good for content consumption. And the Moto G Stylus also has a slightly taller form factor at 20.5:9 versus 20:9. So having a taller form factor is going to make things look a little bit better in landscape mode. And then when you're reading, you can fit more on the screen without scrolling as much. But that being said, the Samsung Galaxy A23 is not bad by any means, and an argument could be made for the quality being a little bit better just because of the brightness. As you can see from the viewing angles, the Samsung Galaxy A23 does have much better viewing angles, so it'll be easier to see in really bright areas, like for example outside in direct sunlight. But overall, despite a few differences, I do think they are pretty close. Now both of these phones have 128GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion, and that's a real good amount. For the average user, you're probably never going to fill that up. And even if you're a power user, you can always offload photos and videos and that sort of thing onto microSD cards. So no matter what way you look at it, the storage on both of these phones is really good. Now there's no wireless charging with either of these phones, but they both do have fingerprint scanners right here on the power keys. Definitely a nice spot for it, and one of my favorite placements. And in addition to the fingerprint scanners, both of these phones also have Face Unlock. But we're going to go ahead and give these fingerprint scanners a try and see how well they work, starting with the Samsung Galaxy A23. There we go, one more time. And there we go, real fast and responsive, no issues here. Moving on to the Moto G Stylus. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see, both fingerprint scanners were real fast and responsive, no issues here. Now moving on to the camera setups. With the Samsung Galaxy A23, we got a water drop notch up here for the front-facing camera, and this camera is 8 megapixels. Not a huge fan of water drop notches, but on this phone overall, since the bezels are so thin, it's really not that bad. Now on the back, we got a quad camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra-wide camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. For video, this phone has a max quality of 1080p in both the rear and front cameras, so pretty average. Now with the Moto G Stylus 2022, we got a hole punch here for the front-facing camera. I personally think this looks so much better, a lot cleaner and more modern, and this camera is 16 megapixels. On the back here, we got a triple camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, an 8 megapixel ultra-wide camera that also doubles as a macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. Despite the A23 having a quad camera setup and the Moto G Stylus having a triple camera, they both actually have the same features. Like I said, Motorola basically just combined the ultra-wide camera and the macro camera. Pretty sure I've never seen that actually done before, but hey, it works, so nothing wrong with it. So feature-wise, essentially these phones are equal. And quality-wise, I would say it's pretty close. I personally did like the photos taken with the Moto G Stylus a little bit better, but the A23 does take some pretty amazing shots, so I really don't think you're going to go wrong with either of them. And for video, the Moto G Stylus 2022 can shoot in up to 1080p in both the rear and front cameras, so same kind of thing as the Samsung Galaxy A23. Now internally, the Samsung Galaxy A23 is getting 4GB of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 680 4G processor. The Moto G Stylus 2022 is getting 6GB of RAM with the MediaTek Helio G88 processor. Now I ran Geekbench 5 benchmark tests on both of these phones, and the Samsung Galaxy A23 came back with a single core score of 386 and a multi-core score of 1644. The Moto G Stylus came back with a single core score of 368 and a multi-core score of 1304. So clearly, the Samsung Galaxy A23 does have an advantage in processing power, and it's going to be much faster when you're doing your daily activities. And with the Moto G Stylus 2022, sure, it's definitely not going to be as fast as the A23, but it's still going to be decent for everyday activities. So I would say, as a general rule of thumb, if you're just going to be doing basic activities, then the Moto G Stylus is going to be fine. But if you want a faster phone, maybe you're doing stuff like mobile gaming quite a bit, and you're just going to be on your phone a lot, then the A23 is going to be the faster device, and you will notice a difference. Now, both of these phones have 5,000 mAh batteries. The fast charging is a little different, with the A23 supporting 25 watt fast charging and the Moto G Stylus supporting 10. So of course, the A23 is going to charge up a little bit faster. That is, if you have that strong of a fast charger. But the Moto G Stylus still does charge up pretty fast. And in real life, I honestly want to say most people are really not going to notice the difference. So battery wise, both of these phones are great. Now, as far as other features go, the Samsung Galaxy A23 does have NFC, whereas the Moto G Stylus 2022 does not. So if you want to use mobile contactless payment services like Google Pay, unfortunately you can't with the Moto G Stylus, but you can with the Samsung Galaxy A23. I don't know why Motorola hasn't started putting NFC in their mid-range phones, but unfortunately this is what they're stuck with. I'm kind of hoping they add NFC at least to the upcoming Moto G Stylus 5G 2022 that should be coming out here in a few months. But honestly, how these new Motorola phones have been lately, I don't really have my hopes up a whole lot. But just know that if you do want to use something like Google Pay, between these two, the Samsung Galaxy A23 is the only one that can do that. Now that being said, one feature the Moto G Stylus does have that the Samsung Galaxy A23 doesn't is of course the thing it's named after, the stylus. So I'm going to show this to you real quick. Now the stylus comes out real easy, just pop it out. And I've never really been a fan of styluses. It's probably just me, unless it's something like a Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra where you can really do art on it. I just don't see the point. I mean, don't get me wrong, I know exactly why people use them, but I've just personally never found a whole lot of value in it. But that being said, I will give credit where credit is due. This stylus is a lot better than its predecessor. Way more sensitive. You can actually sort of do stuff on it. Sure, you can't actually really draw, but when it comes to taking handwritten notes on your phone, stuff like that, this stylus actually does work surprisingly well. Definitely much better than I expected. And of course, you can also use it to navigate through the phone, and I can see where that could come in handy. So overall, with LG basically out of the market, there's of course nothing like the LG Stylo 6. So really, when it comes to mid-range phones, the Moto G Stylus is one of the only new phones with a stylus you can get without getting something like a Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra, which obviously is going to be quite a bit more expensive than these phones. So if you really do want a stylus, but you don't want to get a flagship phone like that, then the Moto G Stylus 2022 is a pretty good option. But in conclusion, which of these devices is better? Now this is actually pretty close because feature-wise, these phones are really similar in a lot of different ways. When it comes to the display, it's kind of debatable because especially now that I look at it a little bit more, the Samsung Galaxy A23 has much better viewing angles and the display is just way brighter overall than the Moto G Stylus 2022. And as you can see, I do have them both at 100% brightness. So that is one difference to keep in mind, especially if you're going to be outside a lot, because that's where you're really going to notice the difference. But on the other hand, the Moto G Stylus is obviously bigger, and it has a better form factor too, which is going to give you a better experience with stuff like streaming videos, playing games, that sort of thing. So honestly, it really just depends. Would you rather have a larger display with better dimensions, or would you rather have a slightly smaller display with pretty average dimensions, but better brightness and viewing angles? That's really going to be up to personal preference. I would probably choose the larger display myself, but plenty of people would much rather have the brightness, and I can definitely understand that too. Now when it comes to pretty much everything else, these phones are just about equal. They have the same amount of storage, the camera setups have similar features, and I want to say the quality is just about the same too. The only other real difference I see is that on one hand, the Moto G Stylus of course has a stylus, but on the other hand, the Samsung Galaxy A23 has a lot more processing power, and it has NFC too. So overall, because of those differences, I would personally say by a pretty small margin, the Samsung Galaxy A23 is the better device here, because not only is the advantage in processing power enough to make a difference in performance, but for me personally, NFC is a really useful feature that I use every day. But again, if you do want a larger display and you want a stylus as well, then the Moto G Stylus 2022 is not a bad choice at all. Now if you want to learn more about either of these phones or see their actual photo and video samples, be sure to check out my full reviews of them on the channel. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you found the information useful as well. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. But as always, I will see you in the next video.